Several diving enthusiasts were exploring an underwater cave when all of a sudden a few pieces of scattered diving equipment appeared before their eyes. The gear looked as if it had been there for many years. Driven by curiosity, they continued deeper, only to stumble upon several skeletons still wearing diving suits. This shocking discovery also uncovered a long-buried unsolved case. Welcome to this episode of Cave Diving Stories, the Jacob's Well Incident. Jacob's Well is located in Wimberley, Texas, in the United States, along a small creek in Jacob's Village. From the outside, it appears to be an oval-shaped well about 4 meters in diameter and 7 meters deep, filled with bluish-green water. However, upon closer inspection, one can notice that there is a dark opening at the bottom, which is the true entrance to Jacob's Well. The water temperature in Jacob's Well remains around 23 degrees Celsius throughout the year, making it very suitable for swimming and cave diving. The cave has been explored to a maximum depth of about 100 meters and is divided into 5 main chambers. The first chamber is the outer area where diving enthusiasts like to stay. The second chamber is between 7 and 50 meters below the surface, where the passages are narrow and branch out in many directions, filled with stalactites, stalagmites, and sedimentary rocks, making it very easy to get lost. The third chamber is located between 50 and 75 meters, where the slope is less steep, but the water current is very strong, especially during the rainy season or when the water level changes, which can create deadly currents. Between 75 and 90 meters lies the fourth chamber, which is more spacious, but entering it is not easy because its connection with the third chamber is extremely narrow. This connection is called the horseshoe-shaped passage, and it is often blocked by falling rocks. Most of the accidents occur here. From the fourth chamber inward, after passing through another narrow passage, the cave appears to end. Beyond this lies the fifth chamber, and although further areas may exist, people have only explored up to this point. Starting from the second chamber, there is no natural light inside the cave, and there is also a large amount of silt. While swimming inside, even a slight movement can stir up the sediment, causing visibility to decrease rapidly. Therefore, Jacob's Well is not only a famous swimming attraction in the United States, but also one of the most dangerous caves. Statistics show that at least 24 people have already died inside while cave diving. On September 9, 1979, a group of diving enthusiasts came to Jacob's Well for cave diving. Among them, 2 people need special introduction. One was Kent Maupin, and the other was Mark here. They were not only friends, but also neighbors. Their goal this time was to dive into the horseshoe-shaped passage, the channel connecting the third and the fourth chambers. At that time, the fourth chamber had not yet been explored, and people also did not know about the existence of the fifth chamber. Both men were experienced divers, but most of their experience came from open water, and they had not received professional, systematic cave diving training. Nevertheless, since they had entered caves before, they thought this time would not be a big problem. Even worse, they did not carry professional cave diving equipment, such as guideline reels, backup lights, or redundant breathing systems. It must be said that they were rather bold. After agreeing on a return time with the other divers, Kent, Mark, and another companion named George jumped into the water. The 3 of them descended from the central entrance of the spring, following the guideline that had been placed earlier, and went straight down. After passing through the open water section, they smoothly entered the second chamber. There they found that the current was stronger than usual, likely due to recent continuous rainfall. Soon the 3 of them reached the third chamber, where the slope was less steep, but the environment became worse. The stronger current, combined with their movement, stirred up the sediment at the bottom, and visibility dropped sharply. They could no longer clearly see the guideline. Ken and Mark still followed their plan and headed toward the horseshoe-shaped passage. In such low visibility conditions, once lost, there would be almost no chance to turn back. At that time, they did not carry a guideline, did not carry a backup knife, and their air tanks were less than half full, which meant they should not have gone further at all. Their other companion, George, happened to see the 2 of them dragging their tanks as they squeezed into the passage. He quickly used his light and tapped on his tank to warn them not to go in, but he received no response. After that, Kent and Mark disappeared deep into the passage. Because George himself was also low on air, he did not pursue them. Instead, he turned on his backup light and placed it at the entrance of the passage. hoping that when they came back out, they could follow the light to find the exit. Then he ascended and reported the situation to the others. After discussing, they all believed that Kent and Mark were likely doomed, so they immediately called the police. After receiving the report, the police immediately assembled a professional cave diving rescue team. The leader was Don Dibble, a former Navy diver who held the highest level certification from the Professional Association of Diving Instructors. At first, Don only sent 2 divers down to assess the situation, but when they reached the horseshoe-shaped passage, they found that it was already blocked with rubble. They tried to clear it with shovels, but every time they removed some, new debris would slide down and block it again. After learning this, Don decided to go down personally, accompanied by the diving supervisor, Calvin Turner. First, they checked the ceiling of the 3rd chamber to make sure that the bodies of Kent and Mark were not floating there. Then Don carefully squeezed into the horseshoe-shaped passage. He held on to the guideline and slowly forced himself forward, feeling around in the sediment for the bodies. But within minutes, disaster suddenly struck. A surge of water carrying sand and rocks burst out from the passage, and Don instantly lost all visibility. Worse still, he was trapped and could not move. He could neither turn back nor signal Calvin outside. He struggled desperately but could not break free. His breathing became faster, and his air supply was running out more quickly. Don realized that he was about to die. As a diving instructor, he knew that drowning was a slow and painful process. He began to consider which method could make his death come faster. Should he swallow water in big gulps, or should he inhale water through his nose? He decided to swallow water because he believed inhaling through the nose would cause violent choking, panic, and convulsions, making his death look unpleasant. If his wife saw his body, she might be horrified. Swallowing water, he thought, might allow him to die more calmly. Therefore, before his air was fully depleted, he began to practice deep swallowing breaths, which caused his stomach to fill quickly with gas. When his regulator finally gave no more air, Don removed his mask and began swallowing water as planned. However, the reality was different from what he imagined. After just a few gulps, he felt intense dizziness, and his stomach started to ache severely. He realized that no matter which method he chose, drowning would not be easy or peaceful. At that moment, he regretted taking on this rescue mission. Suddenly, Don felt something pulling him. Then a beam of bright light shone on his face, and something was pushed into his mouth. His lungs cleared, and he breathed air again. It turned out that Calvin, waiting outside the passage, had noticed the sudden flow of mud and realized that something had gone wrong inside. He quickly entered the passage to check. Minutes later, he found Don, grabbed him, and pulled with all his strength. He also pushed his own spare regulator into Don's mouth, saving him just in time. When Don was brought out of the cave, the people outside were shocked. His stomach was swollen like that of a woman 9 months pregnant. It was because he had swallowed too much gas and water. Don was rushed to the hospital where doctors found that his stomach had ruptured badly. After emergency surgery, he narrowly survived. Meanwhile, the search inside Jacob's well was still continuing. In order to clear the rocks blocking the passage, the rescuers brought in a large amount of equipment to pump and remove the debris. However, the effect was poor because as soon as they removed part of the blockage, new rocks would slide down and fill the space again. After 1 week of effort, the clearing work had to be stopped. With the consent of the families of the victims, it was decided that Kent and Mark would remain in the cave forever. To prevent more accidents, the entrance to the horseshoe-shaped passage was sealed with a reinforced concrete plug. However, 6 months later, other divers dismantled the plug. Next to the site, they even left a plastic sign that read, "You will never keep us out." This reckless act indirectly led to another tragedy 3 years later, which was the case I mentioned in a previous episode. At that time, the 4th chamber was explored for the first time, but the bodies of Kent and Mark were not found inside. In February of 1984, the cave management team carried out another detailed survey of Jacob's well. During this survey, they discovered the remains of Kent in a side passage of the 4th chamber, but Mark was still missing. While recovering the remains, they also discovered the existence of the 5th chamber. Afterwards, the management team installed an iron barrier at the entrance to the 2nd chamber. Time quickly moved forward to the year 2000. By then, diving technology and equipment had advanced significantly. An expedition team once again entered Jacob's well for exploration. While measuring a side tunnel between the fourth and the fifth chambers, they discovered partial human remains. The equipment found confirmed that these remains belonged to Mark, who had been missing for 21 years. Unfortunately, due to constant water currents over many years, less than half of his body remained. Nevertheless, the disappearance case finally had an answer. In fact, during this exploration, they also found another set of remains inside the fifth chamber. But to this day, the identity of that person has never been determined. It can be seen that the number of deaths inside Jacob's well is at least more than 20 people. As for the deaths of Mark and Kent, the causes are also very clear. The sudden change of water current and the stirring up of sediment that caused the loss of visibility were the direct reasons. However, the fundamental reasons were their lack of experience, their insufficient awareness of risk, and their failure to carry essential equipment such as a guideline, a backup light, and a redundant breathing system. At that time, diving equipment also objectively limited their ability to respond to emergencies. This accident directly promoted the emphasis on safety rules, such as mandatory use of guidelines, buddy system diving, and redundant equipment. Especially in complex caves, divers must strictly follow the principle of always bringing a line when entering and always returning when losing the line. That concludes this episode. Thank you all for watching, and see you in the next one.